how effective is Ozempic for weight loss?
It is effective, but I don't think that it is for everybody.
Everybody talks about blood pressure and cholesterol, and these are valid concerns, but a lot of people don't know what an A1C is, and that's why I just butt in. I'm sorry about that, because someone's gonna watch and say, what's that A1C? I thought A1 was a steak sauce that I put on my steak.
Even if you are on Ozempic, there should be exercise like weightlifting or something put into it, so this way your body is getting the best of both worlds.
On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Kumar. She will be discussing Ozempic. Is it safe? What are the side effects? What's it actually doing? And what to pair with this drug to make sure that you're losing weight the right way, the safe way, the effective way to keep it off. Let's get right to it. Thank you so much for coming. We're really happy to have you on the podcast. I'm very interested in this topic. Ozempic is something that everybody is talking about. Would you just start by just letting the audience know who you are, just give them your credentials and tell them a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Dr. Manisha Kumar. I am a registered licensed pharmacist here in New York, and I currently am a IVF pharmacist.
If you could just start by telling us, what is the main medical purpose for Ozempic?
Ozempic came out many years ago, mainly for those that have type 2 diabetes. And then over time, they noticed that weight loss was occurring in a great way, but also it depends on how it's being used and how long. Are we controlling just the blood sugar, or are people just using it now to quickly lose some weight? So the way Ozempic works is to basically reduce gastric emptying, which means that once you ingest food, you have these GLP-1 receptors that activate and move your food into the duodenum, or it basically goes into the digestive phase. What Ozempic, or a drug like Ozempic, a GLP-1 receptor agonist, it helps you keep or maintain the food longer as it's ingested. So this way it keeps you from feeling full for a longer period of time.
So is it actually keeping food in your stomach for a longer period of time, or just making you feel like there's food in your stomach for a longer period?
If I'm not wrong, it basically keeps the food in your stomach for a longer period of time before it goes into your intestines and whatnot and works its way out of your body. So for a normal person, if we were to have a snack right now, maybe we want something else a couple hours later. Somebody on Ozempic may not feel that hunger.
Yeah. What it's creating is a condition called slowed down gastric emptying.
Okay.
So and there's foods, and we'll talk about that. There's foods, as Manisha knows, there's foods that will accomplish that as well, and fiber and stuff like that. It's just not this drug that accomplishes that, but it definitely does slow down the digestion process, which sends a message to the brain, because everything goes to the brain, right? I can come and punch you in the arm right now, Nick, which I would never do to you.
Well, I appreciate that.
But you don't feel it here. It sends a message, if you've ever cut
Right,
your
like when you stub your toe and it takes a second to feel the pain, it's because it's got to take that time.
Right.
Yeah.
So by slowing that gastric emptying, the brain, like Manisha said, is getting a signal saying, hey, I'm still full. I don't want another meal. And now, if that's happening on a daily basis, you see why this weight loss is happening by default.
So,
would you agree, Manisha?
No, I do. So our body, to your point, has GLP-1 receptors in the body. They're located in various parts of our body, various tissues, and that's what will get activated with these GLP-1 receptor agonists. But our body does produce the hormone on its own or with food that we ingest. To Mike's point, there's lean proteins, legumes, veggies, fruits, fiber.
Yep.
So these are things that can definitely help if you're trying to mimic GLP-1 on your own naturally.
Yeah.
Now, is it also doing something for high blood sugar? Because that's the way it's affecting the type 2 diabetes, right?
So what it does is that it's when you have your GLP-1 and you're intaking a injecting a GLP-1 receptor agonist, what it's doing is help produce the insulin to reduce the blood sugar in your body. That's why we were talking about mimicking it naturally through exercise and whatnot. And you can do that, or you are given said drug to be able to help you produce said hormone or help you get the insulin you need to be able to reduce the amount of blood sugar being produced after eating.
Sure.
And Manisha, GLP-1 is being thrown around, but that stands for glucagon-like peptide, right?
Correct.
Okay. So glucagon is a hormone that we can get just from ingesting protein. So everybody's, a lot of people out there, glucagon has been, it's always been around, and now it's a new term, but when you eat high protein, especially animal protein foods, you get a good dose of glucagon.
But I would assume it's not at the same level as you're getting with a drug like Ozempic.
Of course not, but at the same time, it's like if you had a regimen to like what you needed to do to keep yourself healthy, then everyone would have that reserve.
Right.
Yeah. So, because people are online saying glucagon like it's something new. It's not new.
Well, they just heard it
it's
for the first time.
It's the antagonist of insulin. So...
It's the antagonist of insulin.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So when I was doing diet for people 30 years ago, I was always managing their protein to carbohydrate ratio and now this is where the people in the low carb community really are confused. They'll be like, I go on low carb because it controls my insulin. Well, some proteins, steak and fish, are more insulinogenic than some carbohydrates. So when you eat protein, you get a mix of insulin and glucagon, where carbohydrates are really drive up insulin. So there's a tightrope that can be walked just with balancing protein and carbohydrates. So what this drug is doing is nothing new. People that know what they're doing have been managing these two hormones with protein and carbohydrates. It's just a lot more simple and it takes all the guesswork out, right?
It's a shortcut.
It's a shortcut.
Yes.
And to that's what makes it more long term. Because once you take it away, if you haven't trained yourself to not want to have food that will make you unhealthy or is not good for you or your underlying conditions, if you didn't practice that behavior while you were on the product itself, then what did you really do to help yourself? Because once I take that away, you will go back to your old habits, which means that you will go back to eating unhealthy and gaining weight.
And we're going to talk about that down at the end of the disaster, Manisha, that can come along with that if they do have to come off it. Because if they didn't train themselves to monitor and educate themselves on how to manage that blood sugar when they come off these drugs, am I wrong by saying that their hunger is going to be 10x?
You're not wrong. I want to say it will vary per person.
Well, if somebody loses a ton of weight and they're on such suppressed calories and now they have to come off that drug, aren't they going to get radically hungry?
I think it'll increase over time.
Yeah. So they're going to really, and that's why it's important to listen to these types of podcasts, because if they do have to come off, at least they know that there's ways that they can balance that gastric emptying naturally. Because some people are going to have, and we'll talk about this, some people are not going to be able to stay on this for reasons like a side effect, or maybe we'll get into the cost of what these drugs are going to cost and when they could potentially come down. Where maybe.
So what I'm hearing is if you're serious about your health, if you're serious about losing weight, this can be a piece of the plan, one tool, but you can't give up on exercise. You can't give up on nutrition, on eating healthy foods, on getting processed
it's like a facilitator.
BS out of your diet. And it can be a kickstart, right? Because for a lot of people, if you have a ton of weight to lose, it is really hard to start exercising. It is really hard to make these changes. But once you start seeing that change happen, whether it's from one of these tools or from like a natural way, that might kickstart your own ability to keep going down the line, to change your diet, to do a little more exercise, right? I know if I put on 5, 10, 15 pounds, it's harder to get out there and get on my skateboard. Right. It's harder to get out there and play, a sport or to chase my son around or do any of that stuff. And then once you drop a few pounds, you're like, oh, I feel good. I'm going to get out more. I'm going to go do this more. So it could be a boost.
So the drill sergeant in me says, screw it, you should know well enough and just do that. Where I see, Manisha's laughing. Where I see that it could be very beneficial for somebody is orthopedically, right? If somebody is grossly overweight, and that is termed, that's not me being a jerk. If they're 100 pounds overweight, orthopedically, this could put a tremendous amount of strain on someone's knees.
Your knees,
hips. So if they lose weight, because I want to say, hey, you should know well enough as an adult that exercise and eating right, like you shouldn't need to stick yourself with a needle to get motivated to exercise. That's the hard ass in me. But the guy that's willing to like negotiate says, okay, if somebody's 300 pounds and they can't even stand without pain, if they can take off 100 pounds through this drug and then take some of that load off on their hips and their feet and their knees, then so be it, because they were headed down a very, very dark path. So then I'm off. Mike Lynch,
and now,
trainer, stamp, go ahead.
As far as Mike Lynch, the trainer, would say, though, if you're doing this to get that, to jumpstart the process, you should also have a long-term goal of weaning yourself off of this drug and just maintaining.
Well, some people may not be able to, but and if they can stay on it without the side effects and they can afford it, then so be it, if that's what they want to do. I mean, some people have to be on certain medications lifetime, but just know that there is no magic pill, right, Manisha? As somebody that you fill prescriptions for a living, there is no magic pill.
There is none, but to your point, for the orthopedic use, what about those that continue taking Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro, and they have that rapid weight loss that can also result in a bone density issue, a muscle mass issue? So how do you feel about that then at that point?
Do we know how quickly that can occur?
I mean, it varies from person to person, so that's why they taper the medication. You start off at a low dose and you work your way up. But some of these doctors, after a week of being on one strength, it's like, okay, you don't feel it that much? Okay, let me try to give you the next strength. And the next strength after that. And if it results in rapid weight loss, that's when you start seeing, I think they call it like Ozempic face, if I'm not wrong, or something. And you see saggy faces and droopy eyes, and like your face almost looks like hollow.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And you see that they're on it and they're just like, I don't know, old looking.
Yeah. Yes. So let me just say, I'm sorry, Nick. No. Full disclosure, Manisha is one of my clients, and me and Manisha have a very unique relationship, as she comes in as the doctor with the medical background and prescriptions and drugs and IVF, right? And all that. And I come in with the trainer, this is what you do, this is how you do it, hard knocks, and we have really great conversations. They're really like think tank conversations. She makes me think like no other client from a health standpoint, right? And we're always bouncing off ideas from one another. So what she said is right. So you have the cognitive like laziness and whatever, but then also you have the physical thing. So to answer your question, Nick, it really depends, because somebody who goes on Ozempic and 20, 30 years old, their rate of sarcopenia is going to be less. Sarcopenia is muscle loss. So we have osteoporosis. Everybody knows what that is. But somebody could become sarcopenic. And so now if somebody goes on a crash diet or goes on Ozempic and they're 20, 30, there's an easier recovery if they come off that. Once somebody is 35 and 40 or greater, losing muscle mass naturally, forget about Ozempic. It is like you get an illness, you can lose 4 or 5 pounds just from having the flu, right, Manisha? Yeah. And it's not so easy to get back on. So when you say losing the muscle mass, is it easy? The older you become, the easier it is. So it's something that really has to be equated for, because losing muscle mass is disastrous. And people are like, oh, I don't want to be muscular. It's not about that. It's the funniest thing when I train women. Women don't say this as much as they used to, because everybody kind of is on board with the idea that muscle mass is important. But back when I was a trainer 20 years ago, women would be like, I don't want to get too muscular, And I would laugh. I'm like, if it were only that easy. So when you get over the age of the 36, Nick, 40, me and you definitely know that. She doesn't know yet because she's still in the young camp. It's all about keeping the muscle mass on. You don't have to worry about putting too much muscle on. So, it's definitely a concern.
Now, you mentioned one thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly. We're talking about Ozempic, but there are other drugs like Wegovy, and I think you mentioned one
Mounjaro.
or two. Okay, and they're essentially
Same.
all doing the same thing?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So if somebody is on Wegovy, not Ozempic, or thinking about it, they can still listen to this conversation and
Yes.
take,
They're all glucagon-like peptide receptor agonists.
Okay.
So they all fall under the same category. They more or less have the same side effects. At the same time, the only difference, I guess, amongst all of them is I think like the frequency of the injection or how to use it.
Okay.
And I think it varies with how much you can reduce your A1C level and how much weight you can lose. Like the percentage is different, but in general, they fall in the same category.
Manisha, you said the word A1C. Now, even some of the doctors I know didn't know 15, 20 years ago what an A1C is. So anytime somebody talks about these topics, we're all vain, right? We're all going to just think about the weight loss. If you don't want to, I can. Managing A1C is super important. By the way, this girl has an A1C. It's a hemoglobin A1C that I've never seen before in my life. You want to quickly just say what an A1C is, or I can if you want, because that is one.
Share.
So that's a collection of 3 months of what your blood sugar is doing on average, okay? And that's one of the real. I'll admit, with this drug, that's one great thing that somebody's gonna really benefit from, because everybody talks about blood pressure and cholesterol, and these are valid concerns, but a lot of people don't know what an A1C is, and that's why I just butt in. I'm sorry about that, because someone's gonna watch this and say, what's that A1C? I thought A1 was a steak sauce that I put on my steak. A1C is a hemoglobin A1C. It's a collection, and it's 3-month average, and this is a marker that is very, very important for longevity, body fat reduction, hormone preservation, and just total overall mortality, right, Manisha?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that drug will really drive down hemoglobin A1C, which is a huge benefit.
And what drives up the hemoglobin A1C?
Excuse my language, but fuck blood sugars, right, Manisha?
Yeah, so it'll be an increase of sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, over time. Because these things happen over decades. Well, actually, no. You got kids that are diabetic at 10 now, but back in the day, it used to be
lifestyle,
30. Yes.
Lifestyle
Yes.
problems,
Yeah.
bad
Blood sugar
diet,
up.
no exercise, essentially, is what we're talking about.
Loss of muscle mass and a swing of up and down, overproduction of insulin resistance, all the stuff that we advocate and teach people how not to do.
Unfortunately, I think we all have kids here, so we know that kids just do less now than they used to. When I was young, I would, as soon as I got home from school, I was out the door. And we were climbing rocks, and we were jumping off stuff, and finding weird things, and just exploring.
Yeah.
And now they're on their tablets.
Yeah, and now they're on screens a lot more, and so that means that they're less physical. I see it with my son. His stamina is not where mine was when I was his age. I could run all day long. Like, okay, you want to go to the store? Let's just run there.
Right.
He can't do that.
Right, but see, like a girl like Manisha, she was getting her master's degree when she was like 10.
I was not.
Me and you were climbing rocks. She was like, I'm going to do this thesis, and then I'm going to compound some stuff together, make a medication,
They're different.
I want to come back in my next life as her.
Oh, okay.
With that brain. So,
Manisha, how effective is Ozempic for weight loss? I mean, is everybody who takes this drug going to see a great result?
For the most part, it is effective. Again, no statistics here.
Sure.
But it is effective, but I don't think that it is for everybody.
Okay.
I've even heard crazy stories of how people use it as like the crash wedding diet.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm just telling you that people take it temporarily, and then there's people just to get to the result.
That doesn't seem like it would be doctor recommended.
No.
when you say it's not, I'm sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead.
That's just
When you say it's
cosmetic.
not for, because you said something I don't want to forget. When you say it's not for everyone, what do you mean by that?
I feel that if your BMI is not, and that's body mass index, and there is a calculation behind it, which I can have Mike go into to be able to get or calculate your own BMI. But if you are not above 27, let's say, in that BMI, where you're falling into a category of actual obesity, then I feel that you should not be considering Ozempic.
So for the girl or guy, and girls are much harder on themselves than guys, because guys, we're pretty lazy sometimes, especially with our body image. For the girl that's struggling with that last 5 pounds that just drives her crazy, which is a valid thing, no good.
No, I don't think so.
Right.
I think that
It's
you need
not-
to look at what you're eating.
Right.
Put some more exercise
Right,
into
to
your...
put this medication in your body for 5 stubborn
For
pounds.
5 pounds, I don't
it's-
think that it's worth it.
Right. it's
Because
not
of
worth-
course with any medication there are going to be side effects, and so to deal with those side effects to that last 5 or
Right.
7 pounds, probably the juice isn't worth the squeeze on that one.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But could it also be dangerous for that person as well? I mean,
So there's underlying conditions. So the side effects that are usually most common is nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or constipation. But then you go into the more adverse like side effects that are more severe, and you can have pancreatitis. And the way that can develop is because there are GLP-1 receptors on the pancreas, on the tissues, which can get activated, and it puts more work on the pancreas to, like it basically gets inflamed
oh wow.
with the blood flow and the work that the pancreas is doing, and it results in pancreatitis over time.
So it's making an abnormal blood flow into that pancreas.
Yeah,
at that
similarly
point.
with renal impairment or kidney impairment, that can happen as well because of the fact of blood flow. Abnormal blood flow can result in kidney failure. But again, over time, if you have underlying conditions or family history, that's what's going to, you need to have a physician look into that and be open and honest about everything that's there and before you get prescribed being on anything that's a GLP-1 receptor agonist. There is a black box warning, which means that it is the utmost severe side effect, and they feel that everyone should know that it's a possibility, is thyroid cancer. Again, GLP-1 receptors are located like on the actual thyroid tissue, and that can result in you guys having cancerous tumors. But again, very, very minimal, but you need to look into familial history. Is there any kind of thyroid disease
Can you
or
just
cancer?
describe what familiar, because people might not know that term
Just
either.
history, like your family history,
Yeah.
along the lines, has anyone, mom, dad, grandma, grandpa,
Yeah.
anyone have had anything thyroid related wrong with them?
Yeah.
And Mike, just quickly for people who don't know, why is weight management so important for overall health? I know obviously there's a lot of body positivity things going on right now, and of course everyone's beautiful, but how is excessive weight affecting our health?
Right. So, even the BMI that Manisha spoke about could be a little misleading because the BMIs that were equated for a long time ago, I don't know who did it and how long ago, they don't equate for muscle mass. But here's the thing, people, there's been times, Nick, where I'll get really heavy and I don't feel well and I have a foot issue and people be like, oh, but you're all muscle. And Manisha would agree with me on this. Your body, your knees, your feet, your ankles, your heart are designed to pull around X amount of weight. Now, if you go online and look at these body mass index scales, or, they'll give you a, Nick should be from 145 to 165. They won't be like, Nick should be 165.
They're giving you a range.
And whoever created this thing called life, yes, they gave us a certain size motor for a certain size frame. It's kind of like if anybody knows pickup trucks. There's Ford 150, 250s, and 350s. Well, the motor that goes in a 150 is not enough for a 350. And if you were to put that 150 in a 350, it will run, but after a while it's going to get beat up because
It's working
not
real hard.
the right motor, right? So when you put extra weight on the body, the skeleton, the knees, the toes, the feet, the ankles, the heart, the lungs, even if it's muscle, Nick, it's just over time, decades, it's tugging around too much weight than it was designed. And that's, take it up with the creator, whoever that you believe that is. So being at what's called an ideal body weight is it takes pressure off the body. Wouldn't you agree, Manisha? Yes. It lowers your blood pressure and it can make your heart rate go down 20, 30 beats per minute, which is a lot. You say, 20, 30 beats per minute. Yeah, well, do that over a day and then over by a week and a month. And we only there's a theory out there that we have a heart and there's only so many beats in that heart. Just like a car only has X amount of miles. And when you're tugging around extra weight, that heart rate's got to work that much harder to tug around that extra weight.
So you're just pulling beats off the end somewhere.
Yes. So you may not want to get in a picture, or you may not want to go on a beach because you don't like the way you physically look, which is very important for our psyche and everything, but you may be shaving off years and decades.
Well, what I was going to say is some people may not care. They may like the way they look at that heavier weight, but it's physically, for them, like metabolically, I guess maybe you would say, right? It's not healthy for them in the long term.
When you put excess weight on, I always give this analogy to make things basic. It's like you have a pickup truck. Pickup trucks are built, they're cool looking, but they're built to pick up things and drive them and drop them off. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you had a pickup truck, that Ford 150, and you put 3 yards of soil in it and never took it out and drove around with it. It will handle, but after a while, the brakes are going to go, the springs are going to go, the frame might get twisted, and the motor is going to be like, hey, you know what? Go screw yourself. Yeah. You got to take the soil out, man. I'm not designed to keep this in here. Okay. You got to let me drop it off on Mrs. Jones Parkway, a house, and go and give me a break for the night. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing with weight loss. People just see the vanity of it, and it's not. It really can shave decades off your life and just make you feel like shit. It's not only, you don't want to live till you're 100 if you feel like shit. When you're tugging around extra weight, people call me all the time, and I'm sure Manisha, as a pharmacist, you heard, people come in, they're fucking deflated, man. They don't feel good because they're tugging around an extra 45, 50 pounds. When somebody comes into me and they have 30 pounds, because we don't even think 30 pounds is a lot anymore, right? They're like, I just got to lose 30 pounds, but I feel horrible, Mike. I hand them an actual 30-pound dumbbell, and I'm like, hold it.
Yeah,
and they
he's
hold
done
it
that with me.
Yeah, hold it, and after a couple of minutes, Nick, they want to drop the thing. I'm like, you are sleeping with this, showering with this, having sex with this, you're doing exercising with this, and you want to drop that dumbbell after 2 minutes. So why are you confused that you're tired all the time?
Right, or your knee hurts when you go upstairs.
Yes, and 30 pounds is a drop in the bucket now. I mean, the average call from me now is 6, especially after COVID, is 60, 100 plus. And this is not to beat on people, it's to educate them that this is why you're feeling like dog shit.
Yeah.
Literally.
Mike, are there ways to do this naturally? What Ozempic is doing for us, and Manisha, maybe you can answer this as well, I don't know, between the two of you, but if people were hesitant because of either the cost or the side effects or just not wanting to put a drug into their system, are there ways people can get some of these same benefits through diet?
Before I do that, I'm going to let Manisha just speak about the cost, because I think once they understand what this costs and how long it could cost, they might be a little bit more inclined to try it naturally.
Because this is all out of pocket right now.
I mean, there are ways to get it approved, to my knowledge, but I don't think it's long term.
Okay.
I think that it comes with a lot of trial and error. Hey, this worked for the patient, this did not, to get an approval. But for the most part, it's considered cosmetic.
Oh.
And cosmetic is
Unless
usually
it's for
not.
diabetes, right?
Yes.
For diabetes, that's not a cosmetic, then that's
No.
Okay.
So you would have to actually be diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in order to be able to get this covered through your plan.
Well, on average, what if somebody wasn't covered, what could this, on average, I'm sure it's different a little bit here and there, but on average, what is it called?
I think it's anywhere from $950 just for 1 month to about $1,300 or $1,400, depending on which one you're on.
So for a lot of people, that's a huge significant. And, most people know the word generic, right? So this is a hot thing right now. In your mind, Manisha, I know you don't have a medical or prescription crystal ball, but what are we looking before it could potentially come back down to something that where people say, like, I want to go on that, I'm going to pay out of pocket. Because a lot of people don't have that type of cash to do month.
I mean, for it to go generic, it could take anywhere, I mean, right now, anywhere between 7 to 10 years, I feel.
Wow.
But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's going to affect the cost either. Because if it's still a hot commodity, what's to say that the generic companies won't?
The market will just still drive the price up.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with 80% of all Americans being obese. Because there's, when people think about obesity, they think about like these really big, huge people that are on The Biggest Loser. That is actually morbidly obese. 80% of Americans are walking around obese at this point.
Which means how much extra weight?
I don't know the exact number, but it's more of that body fat, BMI. Okay. But I would say that if you're, I don't know, Manisha, what do you think? I think if you're like 20 or 30 pounds over your ideal body weight, you're probably obese at that point, right? Especially if you have a low amount of muscle mass.
I think that's a fair statement.
Doesn't matter. It really matters, Nick. Like if somebody is really under-muscled and they got a shitload of body fat, they could be obese. And then, it's very funny that sometimes in clothes, you can see somebody and you'd be like, that person isn't obese, but they have such high percentage of body fat, but they look small because they are so underweight from muscle mass and bone mass. Mm-hmm. So sometimes these things are deceiving. And in fact, Manisha, I don't know if you read this or not, and I'm not trying to be a downer here, but with these studies are already coming out. They do what's called the DEXA scan, okay? And this is like an MRI of your body fat. And they're showing that upward to 60% of the people that lose weight on these drugs, it's such a crash of body weight that 60% of these people, their body fat is actually higher than when they started, which is disastrous.
So that means they're losing muscle and bone.
They're losing bone, mostly muscle mass, connective tissue. And you could even lose people don't think about this. The heart is a muscle. So you could even lose cardiac tissue. It's something you really want to think about, and I'm not trying to be negative and shit on.
No, but these are things that people, if you're preparing to start this drug, these are things that we want you to know about because this is something you're putting in your body and this can and likely will happen to you if you're not exercising, if you're not changing your diet, if you're just jabbing yourself in the leg with the Ozempic. It sounds to me like you're going to lose some of the things you don't want to lose and maybe hold on to some of the things you were trying to lose.
Right. And the other thing I just want to say too, because I can be pretty abrasive with these kind of things, is I am not we live in a world now, it's just an echo chamber of people just saying this and then they have a posse of people that say, yeah, it's this and that's bad and this is good. I am not on the camp of big pharma is bad, okay? Drugs save lives. Literally, I have been sick, and if I didn't get prednisone, I would have died. Mm-hmm. So I'm not an anti-pharmaceutical, big pharma is out to kill us and everything is the bottom line. I am not that. But a lot of these drugs do come with side effects, and you need to be educated, and they come with an expensive cost, and you got to ask yourself, is this something... Like, Manisha, when you agree, if somebody's going to go on this, they have to budget that in almost like a car payment. Because if they're going to come off it, they might have problems.
Yeah. I feel that if you can add in good behavior or good habits and then still need the help or the push of the medication, we're not against it, or I'm not against it. However, I do feel that we should share ways that they could mimic a GLP-1 in their body.
Yeah.
So you do
natural ways.
Natural ways.
Yeah. So could maybe both of you could get into that a little bit?
And I will. Well, just managing blood sugar and slowing gastric emptying. Slowing gastric emptying is going to be more dieting. Or the diet or the food that you eat. Mm-hmm. But Manisha will tell you, when I met Manisha, and I'm sorry, babe, I'm going to throw you under the bus here, she did not like exercising. She complained about every single thing that we did, and she was like, and then I won't get into it, but we had a little hard conversation. I basically said to her, look, whatever body you want, what do you think, how we're going to get you there with this type of energy that you're bringing in. You don't have to like this exercise. You don't have to love it, but you gotta do it. And if you're gonna show up and pay me as your trainer, move. And just doing that can really radically change the way somebody metabolizes calories. I mean, Manisha's at a weight now, like, I got to a point with her, I'm like, Manisha, you gotta start to eat more. Do you know how many millions of people wanna hear that sentence? Right?
Yeah, it's true.
Right?
It's true.
Because she's like, Mike, she really made some major changes. And she's like, I got this. And I'm like, you got to eat more. And she came in like a couple weeks later, right? And she's like, you're right. I started eating more and I saw the change. So, and that's where you want to get it to the point where it's like, so some of these things that
Which is the exact opposite. You're taking a drug to stop eating, but there's a place where you can be where you can eat more if you're doing the hard work.
I said to her a couple of times, you look a little too thin. I mean, everybody wants to hear that sentence. Add a meal. So just that and eating the high fiber, high protein, avocados and good fats to slow that gastric emptying is a natural way to do these things.
So the avocado, what else did you say? High protein?
High protein, especially, I'm sorry for the vegans and vegetarians, animal flesh does digest at a very slow rate. And high fiber, whole grains, and low sugar fruits are really gonna kind of hang out in the stomach a lot longer. And obviously if you throw water in with that fiber, and there's certain type of fibers like psyllium husk, it forms a gel and it hits the stress receptors in the brain that sends that same message to the brain, hey, you're full, dude, or chick, or woman, or whatever, And, I think that we're living in a world now where people fear food, and that makes me sad.
Right. Well, they fear food because they're eating a lot of processed food. They're eating a lot of foods that are formulated in a laboratory, not on a farm somewhere.
Right. I know that I don't really get sad a lot, but if I've had a heavy loss, I don't think about food. I get where I don't want food. So we're like in a world where we're like, oh, I'm hungry. That's a bad thing. People beat themselves up about, and look what everybody's celebrating with this drug. I'm not hungry anymore. Food is necessary.
It's also very yummy.
Yeah, it's very yummy.
It should be a very enjoyable part of your day.
Right.
Yeah.
Sharing a meal with family, friends, even by yourself. Just a good meal feels great.
Right. And, as we're talking about this, I have a million thoughts in my head. What Manisha was saying about people maybe not wanting to go on these drugs, for those people that don't have a significant amount of weight to lose, you could just even run into dehydration, malnourishment, bone problems. We talked about bone density, and that could be, I don't know, I'm not a pharmacist, but is that an absorption problem, or is it, hey, I was eating 2,000 calories, now I'm on this drug, I'm not hungry anymore, I'm exercising now, and I'm eating 1,000 calories. Well, that's what's called a crash diet or starvation, and now that's going to be even. So you talk about the muscle loss. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have a 60-year-old woman or a 70-year-old man, that can actually fucking kill them because now they're malnourished. Do you know, Nick, that I don't want to butcher this. So if I'm a little off on the numbers, I think it's 65% of women that fall over the age of 65 will die within a year because of a bone fracture.
That fall.
I might be a little off, yes, but I do know it's women, because women suffer from fractures more because they have a more difficult time absorbing calcium than men for whatever reason. That's over my pay grade. But 65 and year older and women that fall, 65% of them that fall and they usually break a hip, they will be dead within a year. And another like 40% of them will be using a walker. Now, why is that? And a lot of that is because they're not taking enough overall nutrition because their bones are so weak. In fact, in longevity studies, people that are 15 pounds overweight actually fare better and live longer than people that are lean. When a disease hits them, they have no reserves. So we live in a society where we're like, lean, 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 you gotta be skinny, 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 and at what cost? When you get to a certain age, that actually could be your demise. and I'm the trainer that wants everybody to look smoking hot, but you can take things too far. Just like you could be too fat and too hypertensive, you could be too thin and too malnourished and shut down hormones.
You gotta have something in the reserve.
Right? You can be like where you don't, like I call it a wet noodle, right? Like you're starving and you're feeling good because you're thin and you're throwing out your fat person clothes, but now you have no sex drive, you have no lust for life, you go to parties and you can't eat any of the food and you become depressed. I think that we're gonna deal with if people don't manage this drug appropriately, I think we're gonna, in years from now, we're gonna be in a deep hole as far as depression goes because food nourishes the brain. And this is just a Mike Lynch hypothesis because people are gonna get addicted to thinness, but you gotta get nutrition. You gotta feed your neurotransmitters in your brain with proteins and fats and carbohydrates. So people are going to be chasing this weight loss, and I think we're going to, people don't manage it.
Well, we're already seeing increased rates of depression anyway because people have less human contact, less interaction. The more time people spend in the digital world and not in the real world, the higher rates of depression and anxiety there are. You see it a lot with young kids and with older people as well.
Yeah, we need food, So it's shutting down the hunger mechanism. I don't know. I see some sort of problems.
Well, I mean, again, what I'm hearing from the both of you is it's just one part of your overall plan to lose weight.
Correct.
You can use it
It's a tool.
to help. It's not the end-all be-all, right? This should not be the one thing you do to get yourself into a better place with your weight, and then you forget about the rest. You got to pair this with nutrition, with exercise, and then it can be something that can help a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think Manisha would agree with me on this, and this is the sensitive Mike coming in. I can see when somebody's overweight, Nick, Manisha knows this, being a pharmacist, when somebody is overweight and they don't like the way they look and feel, they feel useless. They feel defeated. So I can see the people scrolling, seeing the before and afters, where they really feel helpless and they want to go on these things. And so I'm all for people feeling better, but they just need to know the things that could come along with it, because you don't want to go from depressed to suicidal. You know what I mean? Because you dug yourself in a deeper hole. I understand why people want the quick fix. I get it. We're humans. We don't like pain. We don't like discomfort. We don't like to do lunges, right, Manisha?
Yeah, we don't like lunges.
Manisha doesn't like lunges. Every time I made her do a lunge, she just went,
Big sigh.
really? I'm like,
I asked him to do them, and he refuses to. So what does that tell you?
I'm like, move.
He's not paid to work out. He's paid to count. You talked briefly, I think somebody mentioned bone density. Have there been studies that looked into bone density loss with patients of Ozempic?
I think there has been studies started on it.
Okay.
I don't have much information on it, but it's definitely something that I can see happening.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I was saying about drastic weight loss.
Sure.
So if it's not being done in a healthy manner, even if you are on Ozempic, there should be exercise like weightlifting or something put into it. So this way your body is getting the best of both worlds.
Okay.
Like even if you're a binge eater and you're just trying to control that, you're trying to control your appetite with this, but you're incorporating in a healthier lifestyle by incorporating in exercise because you never did that before. It works hand in hand. I don't feel that people should just be on said drug and living their life that way. I don't think that that's the healthiest way to go.
And another thing to mention is this drug has not been around for too long, so likely there are not long-term studies of the effects on this drug, correct?
Correct.
So that's something to watch out for.
Yeah, so you're in a study yourself right now if you're on it, basically.
Yeah, like it came out just as a diabetic product 2017. And then 2021 or so is when it started, weight loss. So like think about it, we're only 3-4 years in and there's no long-term studies on what this could do.
I'm sure the answer to this is yes, Manisha, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. Let's say, and we don't have to get into milligrams of dosaging or whatever. Let's say somebody starts at a low dose and they go up, they titrate up, right? And then they lose all the weight and they get to the ideal body weight, or they get too thin. Can they, at that point, make a decision with their doctor where, like, I'm too thin, I feel a little depressed, I feel not as sexual, or my energy is low because I feel like I'm not hungry enough? Can they, like, pull it back down where they don't come off the drug, but their hunger ramps up a little bit? So, like, let's say somebody was on eating 5,000 calories and they go all the way up on this medication. Now they're only eating 1,000 calories and they're exercising off 500 calories a day, because people don't understand that a deficit comes from two places. It comes from your mouth and it comes from activity, right? So if you're only eating 1,000 calories, but you're burning 500 calories a day, you're literally only eating 500 calories. Yeah. So if you're out there and if somebody says you look horrible, you're way too thin, and a lot of people say it, listen to them, because it can be addicting being thin, okay? And it can actually be a matter of life and death. So at that point, if someone says, I feel frail, or my bone density is off, or anything like that, I don't want to come off this thing because I'm scared to. I've been fat my whole life and I'm scared. So is there a middle ground where they can actually lower it back down, where they start to get a little bit more hungry and now their calories go up, where they don't have to do a full break from it?
So I haven't heard of anyone doing that, or seen it, I should say.
Does that make sense, though?
But it does make sense.
Okay.
Because the only reason you would be tapered up is because you're not feeling the appetite suppression as much.
Yeah, but don't you think that people are, because I know I have absolutely zero patience, because, like, I want everything yesterday, right? So don't you think that there are people, let's be honest, there's people probably saying to their doctors, I'm still hungry.
Yep.
But they're not fucking hungry. Because if I went on Ozempic...
Oh, you're saying just to get a higher dose?
Just to get a higher dose.
Yeah, because they want... Think about it. I'm that guy.
What tool or measurement is there to know if
there's no
you
way
just have to believe them.
Yes. I'm telling you something right now, full disclosure. I'm going to throw myself on the bus. If I had to go on Ozempic after a week, I'd be like, Doc, I'm still starving. I'd want him to max Mike Lynch out. I mean, look, I got one tattoo. Look how that ended up, right? So what I'm saying is, if they maxed him out and now they're having all the downsides of getting not enough calories, and you can understand where somebody could be 30, 40 years of obesity and they're like, oh my God, I understand everybody saying, my hair's falling out, or I'm lost my period because I'm too low in calories. But I'm petrified to come off this drug. Maybe the doctor can just reduce it back down.
Yeah,
it
possibly.
Makes sense,
it
right?
makes sense. I don't know if it's doable.
Right.
I see doctors prescribing 2 strengths at a time. Hey, when you're done with this box, start this one.
Jesus.
So I can't really tell. All I see is how people come in, what I'm servicing, and the questions that are asked.
Mm-hmm. So do you think people should, like, slow and steady wins the race, like, yeah, okay. Chill out, go on the minimum dose, unless, you need to lose weight for a movie role or something, like, stay on the minimum dosage.
No matter what
right?
you're doing, a crash diet is not the answer.
No. Actually, you know what, Nick, you bring up a great point, and we'll talk about this in a million videos that we do. It is humanly impossible. Pay attention to this. It's humanly impossible to lose more than 2 pounds in a week of adiposity, which is body fat. So just know, anything past 2 pounds, because people will lose 4 pounds in a week and get psyched, know that it's water weight, which is not bad in the beginning. That's edema. And sometimes if you wore tight ankle socks or something like that, you see that imprint, that's unhealthy. That's called pitting edema. So when people change their lifestyle and start exercising the first week or two, they can really lose a lot of bloat, which is a healthy thing. But once that first or second week, low carb diet, whatever it is, 2 pounds. 2 pounds.
Because otherwise you're losing something you wanted.
You're losing vital tissue, right, Manisha?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's scientifically been proven time and time again. And that's on the max end. I tell people, on average, you should rough out to about 1 pound a week. And no one wants to hear that, especially if they have 100 pounds to lose. But unless you want to be looking the way Manisha talked about, Ozempic face, where you look dry and like you're smoking a crack pipe. Because that's what will happen. You get this, and people get caught up in the number. They see the scale going down, it gets addictive like a drug. And then, you know what I called this year at the beach? I saw it, and I'm not being a dick, but I called it the year of the sag. I saw so many saggy looking bodies.
So we've been talking for a while. I want to wrap it up.
Yeah.
What is your message to people who are considering going on a course of this drug? People who are overweight and are thinking that this might be something that could help them lose the weight that they've been trying to lose for years and haven't been able to.
My message will basically be that speak to your provider. Have a really intense and detailed conversation on making the right decision based on your BMI and all the other underlying health conditions you may or may not have before making the decision. And do not forget to incorporate other healthier lifestyles while you may or may not be on a GLP-1 receptor agonist.
Mike, anything to add?
Just, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but all the things, I understand why people want quick weight loss, but like Manisha said, and look, Manisha, when I met Manisha, how much weight did you lose working with me in totality?
I think 45 pounds.
Right, so
Wow.
Manisha, I mean, look, I was heavy when I was a younger guy, but I wanted to get big, so I've never been in a body where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how heavy I've gotten. So Manisha, you know, you can see where Manisha came in not too happy about the way she looked, you know? So, and I see a huge difference in the way she
It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
She's actually, right? Why don't you say how, like, you alluded to the fact that you, like, are addicted to working out at this point, right?
Yeah, I tend to go to the gym at least 5 times a week now. 3 is usually with Mike, and 2 or 3 is by myself. And yeah, it's a great feeling.
And just so it's said, you did that through exercise and diet change, not with a course of drugs.
Correct. That was all on my own. I've been with Mike for 4 years now, I think.
Yeah. Best 4 years of my life.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, it was very hard in the beginning. And what really just like kind of sprung it all and I needed to do something is I have little kids and they're boys and I wasn't able to keep up with them. And that really got to me, and then Mike saved the day from there on. Well, I mean, I did the work. He just kind of sat there and counted.
But I think with any habit, changing something you do every day, it's really difficult.
It is.
Learning to play an instrument, doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Where you really have to make not a change for a day, not a change for a week, but a year long, a decade long, a lifelong change. It's really difficult because there's going to be a day where you don't want to do it and you wake up, or a day where you get sick, or a day where you're too busy and you do miss a day, and then you got to get back on that horse the next day, and it's hard.
Yeah. So I would think, and that's why I brought it up, because Manisha's sitting here, and thank God she's, giving us our time and teaching about Ozempic and other drugs that we'll talk about in the future. But she lost 45 pounds, so who better to ask than her? But I would just say that as a trainer, use it as one of the legs on this tabletop. It's a tool. It's not the foundation. Mm-hmm. It's the diet. It's the training. It's the sleep. It's your mind. And then if you're somebody that feels like you can afford it, you don't get the side effects, and you just can't control yourself, you really legitimately have an eating problem where, like an alcoholic or a drug, and you're willing to do the work, but at nighttime you're just raped and it's a life or death situation, have at it. Go on it. But if you're somebody that, is super vain and I just can't lose this 5 pounds, I think Manisha would agree with me. It's not worth the cost and the side effects that come along with it. Just so know who you are, and I'm all for it if it's going to save someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my message.
Anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Manisha,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Manisha. I'm psyched to talk about your real, Manisha has a lot of knowledge, but our next video is going to be about IVF, where she's
We'll try to go over some things.
Yeah, and we'll talk about other drugs, but I just want to thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We know
Thanks for having me.
with a career and kids and family and everything, it's hard to carve out this time, but it is appreciated.
Yeah, and just I wanted to. I hope you don't mind that I brought up that you lost that weight, because people are seeing you sit at a desk and you're a very attractive woman. You got beautiful hair, and I don't know if they. She travels like. How long you travel for your nails to get done?
Not anymore. Not anymore.
But somebody looking at you, you know, you look like you got it all together. And if I didn't bring up that you lost 45 pounds, they would be like, she doesn't understand what I'm.
No,
what I'm
I
going
totally
through.
understand.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah. So, but thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you to everyone who watched this time, and have a great day, and hopefully we've armed you with more information so that you can make an informed decision about how you can start your weight loss journey, if that's what you need to do. Have a great day.
And also, if there's anything that we didn't touch on about Ozempic, and there's questions or comments, maybe we'll do a part 2 on this, and leave a question down in the comment.
I'm sure we missed some things.
Yeah,
this
and
is
if
a really
Manisha
broad
has the
topic.
answers, we'll have her back on for that. We'll drag her in for Ozempic part 2. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next video.
Be well.
Please like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any videos in the future.